Welcome to Lines of Reasoning, Perspectives on Harassment in Higher Education. I am Andy Brantley, President and Chief Executive Officer of Coupa HR. With me is a panel of experts who will help us evaluate 7 harassment scenarios that have been taken from feedback we've received from Coupa HR members across the country. First, on my left, is Maria Martinez from Rollins College. Next to Maria is Hosea Long from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. To my immediate right is Lynn Bynum from Bellarmine University. And last but not least is Mary Maher from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. Thank you all for being with me today.
My pleasure.
Sexual harassment and many other forms of harassment have been prohibited by federal law, state law, and many institutional policies for decades. So you may say, okay, I've got it. Sexual harassment is not allowed here. Amazingly, it still exists in a variety of forms. And sometimes it is very difficult to recognize. To help you evaluate your knowledge of sexual harassment, we will be showing you several reenactments drawn from these experiences of Coupa HR members. They may or may not constitute sexual harassment. If you are viewing this video with a facilitator, you will have the chance to stop the video and to discuss the scene from your own perspective. Afterwards, the video will resume and our panelists will comment. You will likely see that sometimes even those with informed opinions will disagree. All right, panel, let's go to our first scene that involves a staff member, Julio, and his supervisor, Lillian.
I'm not sure I'd illustrate the data that way, Julio. Have you considered using bar graphs?
No, but I guess I could.
Good, because you want to make it easier for the reader to see trends over time.
That makes sense, I guess.
That's what I like about you, Julio. You are always open to new possibilities. I've always said you have tremendous potential. And with the right coaching, I know we could get you promoted to my assistant.
That sounds great. But what do you mean by coaching?
Julio, I respect you, so I'm going to be honest. You would be even more effective if you expressed yourself more confidently.
More confidently?
Exactly. And I think I have a plan.
A plan?
Yes. I know I can help you with this, but because I'm your boss, I'm not sure that we should spend a lot of time together at work. I don't want people to think that you have performance issues. So, I think it would be best for me to offer you coaching off-site.
I'm not sure I understand.
We could have dinner together once a week or so, and we could talk about your communication style and what it would take to get you promoted. I've learned some important lessons along the way, and I'd be happy to teach you how things work as you move up the ladder.
But I'm not sure I feel comfortable with that. Couldn't you just give me advice here in the office?
I'd hate to embarrass you like that. What if people found out I was concerned about your abilities?
But I'm not sure my wife would like me having dinner with you like that.
Oh, Julio, I thought you were management material. Career advancement sometimes requires sacrifices.
I'm not saying I'm not interested. It's...
Look, I like you. I see opportunities for you. But if you're not willing to invest the time in making a promotion a possibility, then I'll focus my sights on someone else.
Very interesting scenario. What do you think, panel?
This might be a classic case of quid pro quo harassment.
Quid pro quo harassment. Mary, could you define that for us, please?
A Latin term, quid pro quo, translates to this for that. So in this context, it could simply mean have sex with me and you'll get a promotion.
You know, with a quid pro quo situation, there's usually an unequal power relationship. Here you have a boss and her employee, and there is an implied reward for compliance or a threat if Julio doesn't do what Lillian wants.
Exactly, like when Lillian said, I see opportunities for you here, but if you're not willing to invest the time, I'll focus on someone else.
Well, just a minute. Was Lillian propositioning Julio or just coaching him? I didn't hear her say anything about sex. She might just be a very busy person who doesn't have time in her day for one more meeting.
Granted, Lillian may have been coaching Julio, except for the fact that she's asking him out to dinner with her. That's a little bit more than staying late to get some extra help. And the dinner thing was an implied date that obviously made Julio very uncomfortable.
Well, you may be right. Nobody should be made to feel uncomfortable in the workplace. I could see Julio wondering, I'd love this promotion, but should I spend the extra time with her?
Well, and we all know that sexual harassment is very much about power.
Or, actually, the abuse of power. Can you imagine if someone had the power to take your job away and you need that job to survive? Can you see why it's difficult to refuse?
Absolutely. Let's focus on another issue, the shoulder touch.
Oh yes, the controversial touch. You know, in most cases, it's someone simply being expressive. But when you look at Lillian's behavior, she's touching Julio's shoulder when she's asking him to have dinner with her.
She does it several times. So that is strong body language, in my opinion.
I advise employees to keep their hands to themselves. Even a simple touch can be misinterpreted or make someone feel uncomfortable.
So let's talk about another issue. If Julio doesn't invest the time and does not receive the promotion, what then?
Well, I believe he would have sufficient cause for a sexual harassment complaint.
Hang on a minute, I'm with you here, but this case could still go either way.
And people are becoming much more savvy and subtle.
Thank you, panel. That was a great discussion. During the next two scenarios, let's focus on a different type of sexual harassment, hostile work environment. This is behavior that occurs that is so unwelcome and so pervasive that it creates a very uncomfortable and sometimes even a hostile work environment for employees.
It looks like you're fine on orange juice, but you could definitely use more 16-ounce waters. I'll get those to you tomorrow, and I promise to bring them myself. Until tomorrow, my Bethany.
Did you see Satish? Really, I've had it up to here. If he's not in my face, he's sending me love notes asking me for locks of my hair. He's making me crazy.
What do you mean in your face?
Like this. Bethany, my flower, you are so lovely.
Have you tried asking him to back off?
What? Are you saying I'm leading him on? Of course I've asked him to back off. Ah, but my beautiful Bethany, in my country, this is how we express our admiration for beautiful women.
Well, it's probably just cultural. We Americans can get very uptight about our need for personal space. Besides, there's not much he can do in the store with all the customers around. Here, look, this is your schedule for next week. Is it all right if you work on Wednesday instead of Tuesday?
That's it? You're just dismissing this? I can't believe you're letting him off the hook. He follows me to my car sometimes and he keeps sending me little gifts.
You're complaining about gifts?
I'll tell you what. I'll send you the aromatherapy massage oil and the CD of him singing ridiculous love songs titled Satish Sends His Love.
Bethany, he comes in a lot and he doesn't bother any of the other staff. If I was his supervisor as well as yours, I'd offer to have a talk with him. There's not much that I can do about a vendor. Plus, I really think this is just a cultural thing. And we need to commit to being accepting of people from other cultures. Did you not get the President's diversity memo?
just met a girl named Maria. Maria. Maria, Maria.
Oh, that's original.
But Maria, tú es bonita.
Matt.
Tú es bonita. You're beautiful.
Yeah, I get it. I'm somewhat familiar with the language.
And I'd like to become familiar with you.
What did you say?
I'm a true admirer of the female form. And I can tell by looking at you that, well, it's clear that you work out. I was thinking maybe we could work out together sometime. You could be like my personal trainer.
Excuse me?
Maria, I hope you won't hold my appreciation for the female form against me. Hey, nothing sinister here. I just wanted to spend some time with you.
You know what? You annoy me. Buzz off and bother someone else. I'm not interested.
Okay, panel, we definitely have several issues that we need to address in these two scenarios. Where do we start?
I'd like to begin with the Satish-Bethany scene. Satish's behavior is clearly sexual, and Bethany has alerted her boss. She's told him to back off. She has clearly communicated this is unwelcomed. I definitely believe this is a hostile environment situation.
I agree, Mary. But what about the issue of Satish not being an employee? He's a supplier.
Oh, that doesn't matter here. The institution is responsible for the conduct of everyone. Now, Bethany's institution may not be able to fire Satish, but they can contact the supplier and say, straighten up your act, or we'll cancel your contract.
Unfortunately, the supervisor has not had adequate training. That might have prevented this situation from getting this far.
That leads us to another issue. The supervisor says it's probably just cultural, and we really should respect other people's cultures. However, is it fair or reasonable to expect an employee to work in an uncomfortable environment?
Oh, that's how we do things in my country is not a legitimate defense.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely right, Hosea, and I think we're all in agreement that we definitely have a hostile work environment here. Let's switch to the elevator scene and talk for a few minutes about the interchange between Matthew and Maria.
Well, you know, I see this as just climbing the harassment ladder. Maria says, buzz off and go bother somebody else. And there's no doubt about the sexual intent in here. So if he doesn't back off, she really does have a valid complaint.
Matthew may have crossed the line, but the truth is this type of behavior goes on all the time in the workplace, and oftentimes is welcomed. Life partners do meet at work.
You're right, Hosea. This is an area where both supervisors and employees have to be very careful. Maria said no. No means no, full stop.
I'd just like to chime in here. There is nothing murky about Matthew's approach, whether he chooses at this point to back off or not. His pickup lines and his suggestive expressions have put him at risk for a complaint by Maria.
Generally, one encounter will not rise to the level of an actionable sexual harassment claim. There have been situations, however, where one encounter did constitute sexual harassment. Let's move on to our next scenario where we review a particularly egregious situation.
Brunette on the left. Brunette.
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 I got one.
It's right here.
Oh, whoa! Is that even physically possible?
Man, I hope so.
Wait, is that her shoulder or her knee?
Does it matter? No.
What are you guys laughing at? You guys need to grow up.
I'm sorry, Fatima. We were just doing research on our smooth muscle proposal.
I forgot to read you guys this at lunch. Fatima, you always like a good joke.
Why is a beer always a better choice than a woman? A beer doesn't get jealous when you grab another beer. B, you can share a beer with your friends. C, a frigid beer is good in bed.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have here? Do we have good fun, or is this sexual harassment?
Well, I suppose one could make the argument that these guys had no idea that Fatima would see the site.
Oh, sure they could. That won't get them off the hook.
Well, according to federal regulations, an action is sexual harassment if it has, and I quote, the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with the individual's work performance. The regulations don't say anything about intent.
Right, Lynn. Legally, the reasonable person standard applies here. If what these guys are doing makes the work environment uncomfortable for a reasonable person, then they've created a hostile work environment.
Mary, you mentioned the reasonable person standard. Does the fact that Fatima is Muslim have any impact whatsoever here?
Well, I believe that if she were to file a sexual harassment claim, Fatima's culture would be taken into consideration. Her headscarf is an obvious sign to a reasonable person that she's Muslim, a culture who finds pornography extremely offensive.
Her religion or her culture has nothing to do with this. A reasonable person working in this country would find such behavior highly offensive.
So all that we're really saying here is that by using the reasonable person standard, we're all agreeing to ensure a professional working environment.
And that's just good common sense, something that these guys clearly lack.
Before we leave this scene, I'd like to point out that I've seen a lot of sexual harassment complaints that are based on exposure to internet porn sites, on emails. All it takes is for someone to be exposed and be offended, and you've got a complaint on your hands.
And most institutions have policies on computer equipment usage that address these issues.
That's exactly right, Maria. It is up to our supervisors and faculty to make sure that this sort of behavior does not happen, and if they observe it happening, to shut it down immediately. It is simply not enough for our institutions to have a policy. Let's move on to our next scene that shows a faculty member and 2 students.
I want to know why you gave me a C on my test on Wednesday.
Andrew, I like the way that you tied the current immigration debate back to attempts to restrict entrance by the Chinese, German,